I'm gonna
Okay.
make a bracket for the snake that's behind Nick in the video screen right now. The copperhead. That's gonna be this is the copperhead bracket.
Welcome to Center Cup. I'm Kyle Miserino, joined as always by Will Leary and Nick Newmeyer, and it is preview day today. We're going to take an in-depth look at the Valspar Championship. We've also got DP World Tour, LPGA Tour is back. Liv is in South Africa with Phil Mickelson making his triumphant return. And we've also got a fun little Cinderella March Madness esque thing we're going to get into as well. But let's start with a little Valspar preview. Will, what are you most looking forward to this week?
Yeah, it's kind of similar to what we saw a couple weeks ago at when Shane Lowry and Nico Echeverria squared off down the stretch. You have a good finishing stretch here too. This one is known as the Snake Pit. Obviously, we are at the Copperhead course, excuse me, at Innisbrook Resort. Yeah, it's another kind of in between week. Obviously, we're coming off the high of the Players Championship, which was an absolute blast, and now we've got the Valspar, but to the Valspar's credit and events like its credit, I feel like that we've had just as much fun watching those in when they've popped up these past few weeks. Obviously, the events to start off the year were great. We had lots of drama, and then the Cognizant Classic was great. We've had a good couple weeks here. So the Copperhead course is another good one. It's like I said, home of the Snake Pit, which is the Moccasin is hole 16, which is a par four, kind of exactly opposite. I don't have the background anymore from last week, but from of the 18th at the Players, it's a dog leg right with water right and trees left. So maybe your guy Matt Fitzpatrick, Nick, that's going to work perfectly for that low little burning cut you love so much. But all three of these holes played over par in every single round in 2025, and they do that every year. It's a really, really tough finishing stretch, a lot of volatility. It's not quite the same as what we saw, where it's a little less likely to get water. Obviously, there's water on hole 16, but 17 and 18 are more in the woods. They're just really hard holes. Um, Tree trouble obviously is a factor. Bunkering is a factor. It finishes, like I said, par four, par three, par four. It's a good course. It'll be fun, and it lends to kind of a different style of winner than we see on a lot of PGA Tour courses. Like if you look at the guys who've won here in the past, it's like the best putters in the world, basically, and really, really good iron specialists is kind of the two sides of the coin that you get here. You've had guys like Peter Malnati won it the year before that, Taylor Moore the year before that, Sam Burns went back to back in 2021 and 2022. Paul Casey went back to back in the two tournaments before that, before the lost COVID year. And then obviously, I'm sure we'll talk about, this guy eventually, but Jordan Spieth won this in 2015. We'll have plenty of
Oh,
time to talk
baby.
more about him. And Gary Woodland, who obviously, as a quick aside, had some um, really cool coverage. I feel like over the past few weeks, with obviously it's a little a week or two old now, but what came out with his PTSD diagnosis following his brain surgery, which is obviously a story that has been front and center, and it is fascinating to see him continue to play golf and be in this field. Obviously, he won it. What is that? 15 years ago now, but he is still in this field after a brain surgery. I think it was wild to see him admit that like he's aware that maybe I shouldn't be playing golf every day, but I'm also going to be playing golf every day. Like I know that maybe it's not my best interest, but this is what I'm going to do this is what I do for my life. So, but all that to say, uh, great week ahead of us. I'm excited for the Valspar again. In between weaker field than we've had the past few weeks at the signatures and the players, obviously, but in for a lot of fun for sure.
Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, like you said, I think this is certainly not a as much of an in-between week as we've seen at like the Cognizant. I think we do
Yeah.
have some very good players in the field. I know you mentioned Matt Fitzpatrick's in the field, Victor Hovland, Xander Schauffele is um, the highest ranked player in the
Hmm.
field. Really hilarious exchange in the media pen yesterday, I believe. They asked him, let me pull up the quote right here. They said, being the highest ranked golfer in the field, does that carry some weight for you playing in this tournament? The reporter's like, I don't mean this as a shot. And Xander's immediately like, starting to kind of feel like one. But he said, it's not every week that you're playing as the highest ranked golfer in the field. Does that carry a lot of weight. And Xander just like, I think the transcript just said "dang" period, which was
Yeah.
a very. I wish I could have seen the video. It's a hilarious exchange, but I think he responded perfectly in saying that he's been around here long enough where he just kind of feels like the elder statesman of the tour, and that he's not really concerned about ranking. But I digress. I think there's definitely a lot of good players playing in this tournament where it's not just going to feel like a throwaway week, even though this is not a signature event. This is not going to be like a massive event like the players. I don't think there's going to be as much of a drop off as there was from the Cognizant. I'm really excited for the finishing stretch. I think, as I mentioned before we hopped on, anytime there's a weird animal statue on the course that I could use as my background, it's freaking amazing. And I just think that anytime a tournament can be decided in that final stretch, knowing that you're taking the lead into the final round, knowing that it's not safe until you get through that stretch of holes is really interesting. And I know at the time we're recording, it's Wednesday, but I am already looking forward to Sunday.
Yeah. And it's also this is the start of the build to the Masters. We are in, after the
Home
players, we're
stretch.
three tournaments. We got this Texas Children's and then the Valero Texas Open, and then we are in Augusta, which is crazy. Like we're kind of in that home stretch, like you said, Nick. But yeah, like we're looking forward to Sunday for sure.
So is this finish? We've got another, 16, 17, and 18 here. Last year, Justin Thomas, who was ended up being the runner up, he was 7 under through 15 in the final round before playing the snake pit, two over with bogeys on 16 and 18 to finish one shot behind Victor, who ended up winning. So it seems like we've got another course that's conducive to hopefully another good finish. What do
Yeah,
we think?
and we'll talk a little bit about Justin Thomas because I'm a big I almost bailed. I know I've already spoiled my pick, but I do like Justin Thomas this week. But no, it totally lends itself to another great finish. It's like I think we talked about this before the Cognizant, after the Cognizant, and now again this week. It's what makes obviously like Nick said, he's very right that this is by no means a weak field. It is just it is a weaker field compared to what we had last week, which is obviously the best field in golf. Um, but these finishes are what like bring the drama and what make these things great. Obviously, sometimes you can have, go back to the waste management, right? Sometimes you can have what happened last year where Thomas Dietrich wins by 7 strokes. But most of the time, what you're going to get is, it keeps your eyes on the screen, the whole time. It keeps you glued to it because, like you said, it is not over until somebody drains a putt on 18 or does something because a two-shot lead going into those final holes, like we saw, Justin Thomas was two over in that final stretch, like that could be gone in an instant. And again, it is a little different compared to what we saw the last few weeks, just in terms of how the variability works, because the last few weeks we've seen a lot of water balls. You see a lot of, stroke penalties, double bogeys. And obviously there's water, like I said, on 16 in the snake pit, but it's I feel like the likelihood is more of what you saw last year with Justin Thomas, where you might string together, you might be two over with two bogeys and a par and like a hard fought par or a hard fought bogey in there, rather than firing balls and losing balls left and right, which is kind of the way we've seen that variability play in the last few weeks. So it'll be a little different, but I would expect it to be there for sure.
Yeah, I think the main thing that I'm looking at as well is that looking at some of the final scores over the last few years, Victor last year won it at 11 under. 2024, Peter Malnati, no relation to Lou Malnati, sadly, won at 12 under. 2023 was 10 under with Taylor Moore. Sam Burns did win it at 17 under. But other than that, you're really seeing just around that 10 under. Paul Casey won it back to back with scores of 8 under and 10 under. So it seems like there's a lot of back to back winners. We got Sam
Yeah,
Burns 2022, 2021, Paul Casey 2019, 2018. Maybe we could see Victor Hovland go back to back as well.
you never
But
know.
I think the beauty is that this is not going to be a birdie fest. This is going to you're going to have to fight for those pars, as Will mentioned. And I think there's going to be a lot of holes specifically on the last final stretch where you're gonna be fortunate to come away with a par. And I think anytime, I love a good old fashioned birdie fest. I can't lie, but anytime you can see the golfers like really fight and really see the course kind of punish you, that's I get like a little sick, twisted pleasure out of that too.
I want to ask both of you guys this. As we're getting closer to the Masters, right? We've got three more tournaments, including this one, before we get there. What do you think is the relationship between guys working on specific parts of their game or guys just independently treating each week at each different course as its own? Or are guys trying to tweak things and trying to peak at the right time as you enter kind of major season here? Will, what do you think?
Um, just to make sure I understand, so like, what are guys like more?
Like Victor, for example. I mean, we know he's been tweaking with stuff.
Yeah, the
Is he
world's
going out
greatest
trying to
tinkerer.
win, doing everything to win this tournament, or is he trying to kind of refine certain parts of his game to kind of be in peak form a few weeks from now as we, get to the Masters?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I do think it's part of why you see a lot of big like a lot of big names, but it's totally player to player. I mean, I was gonna say almost like Xander Schauffele might be treating this as a week to warm up, but to be honest,
Yeah.
he kind of needs this one too. Like I feel, and all these guys, to be clear, are going out there with the expectation that they can and will win. I think that is, nobody's. I mean, maybe not all these guys, but none of the top of the field here are like treating it purely as a training week, I think. Um, but it is a good point. It's certainly true that like I'm sure, you know the Masters is where you want to have yourself set. The Masters is where you want to make sure your swing is where like whatever peak you can get it to. That's where it needs to be. So if there are parts of your game that have been scratchy and haven't been consistent, this is a place to try to iron them out. But the unfortunate part of that is that this is, like Nick was saying, a very tough course. This is not a place where you really, if you're trying to iron things out and experimenting with a couple things, it's really hard to expect to make a lot of birdies out here. And I mean, it's hard to expect to make a lot of birdies out here when you're in your best form, but you know, um, yeah, it's a great course. Like it does both things. I'm sure there are guys in this field that are looking at this week as an opportunity to iron out parts of their game, but it also, I'm sure they're all coming in here with the expectation to win, and nobody's. If you ask that question to people in press tents, nobody's going to tell you that they are here to work on their iron swing or refine their putting stroke, obviously. But I'm sure to some degree there are people who are thinking of it like that.
Yeah, and I think, to kind of build on that, there are also players that are unable or that are treating this week as sort of a different way to fine tune for the Masters. Obviously, Rick Fowler is not here this week, and he's
Hmm.
someone that arguably probably should be here this week. And if he wants to qualify for the Masters, he's someone that he's taken a bit of heat online for skipping this week. And so, maybe he's just either trying to focus more on Houston and Valero, but or maybe he just wanted a break. But at the same time, I do think you're going to get a sense of, they're not necessarily treating this week as a fine tune week, as Will said, but I think you're definitely going to see from either a betting or a fan viewing standpoint, um, it's going to be difficult to go into the week with bad momentum. And if there's a player that, misses the cut in a bad fashion this week, probably not someone that I'm going to be wanting to root for the Masters. So I think form is truly everything here.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense. I mean, I just wonder just because, if you're playing in an event with 18 of 50, I'm sure there are some guys there who obviously you want to win, but obviously you want to also be in as good form you can as you come up towards the Masters. So it's just interesting. I mean, like Xander, for example, somebody who hadn't played like necessarily great up to this point until last week, who played really well. And I'm sure if he has another good week this week, he's going to be a popular pick as we start heading towards the Masters. And there's a few guys who can put themselves in that position, kind of. Okay, so is there any other guys specifically you guys think could do well in this course, or will you want to
Yeah.
get to your prove me wrong guy?
Well,
What do you think?
I'll start more just like as we mentioned, like what this course favors, right? It's like we said, the winners tend to be it tends to be approach play and putting. There's a little bit more emphasis on long irons specifically. And just looking at who that favors, the name that popped up first is Jacob Bridgman, which we will talk about him a little bit more later in our next, Cinderella segment. Spoiler alert there. But he, first of all, is playing outrageous golf, which is, one reason why I would expect him to play well here this week, just because he's playing well everywhere all the time. But he's also, since 2026, this is only of the guys, sorry, of the guys in the Valspar field. He is first in strokes gained putting per round, and 13th in strokes gained approach. Um, he's very high up in any strokes gained category, like we said, but he's the guy who I would expect to play here. Well, Sam Ryder, who's the last man in the field, like just got in today after Akshay Bhatia WD'd. Um, he actually like weirdly fits, although he's like kind of the exact antithesis of Jacob Bridgman, in that he is playing pretty poor golf in 2026, coming in here off a couple missed cuts and some like really no notable finishes. I think he's got one top 30 in 2026. And that was at the Amex, the first event that he played. He does have two top 20s at the Valspar, but the course fit there, like we'll get to the guys I like this week in general. He is purely just a course fit guy. Like it theoretically makes sense. Do I expect it to, come to fruition and him to play particularly well? No, but one guy who the course does fit is Jordan Spieth, and I won't take this too much away from Nick. And we can do that now. But just to put a little stats behind it, he is 11th in strokes gained putting and 23rd in strokes gained approach in the field. That's since the start of 2026, to be clear. And obviously, he's won here in 2015, like we said, in T3 here in 2023. So, Nick, I'm sure you got a lot to add on to that about why you love your boy this week. But
This might be the week, guys. I'm telling you, this is. I got a good feeling. I think this is a test. This is I sort of spoiled it on Monday's episode, but I will be picking Jordan Spieth this week, and this is a
wow,
test
just
to
nailed it.
see
Okay.
this is a test to see just how much I can depend on him heading into Augusta. This is, you talk about how the players are treating this week as either a tune-up week or if they're trying to test anything out. I'm using this as a fine-tune week for Augusta. I'm looking to see what I can get from Jordan Spieth out of this week and see if he's someone that I can count on to contend in tournaments moving forward. I think this is a course where clearly, I'm not the only one that thinks this, as Data Golf is listing him as the eighth best odds to win this tournament. I think what really makes him a contender, and Will, you sort of touched on this already, is both the approach play and the putting. So if you really look at it, in putting, he's gained strokes in every event so far this season, except for Phoenix and the Players, which that one was just more so due to a disastrous 5 strokes lost in his third round, which still just feels like a bad
Hard to
dream.
do.
But so that's kind of an anomaly. We're not going to count that one. But the putting has been dialed. The three tournaments that he's gained strokes. So actually, I take that back. 4 tournaments he gained. So I'm looking on Data Golf right now. He has 0.34 strokes gained putting at the Sony, 1.6 at Pebble, 1.7 at the Genesis, and then zero point 0.7 at the API. And then approach play is where I'm really looking at, because we saw, obviously, I mean, nothing was clicking in Phoenix. That's just how it was. And then approach play wasn't really solid at Pebble. I think he was just getting bailed out by a bunch of long putts. But every tournament since Pebble has been an improvement approach play in strokes gained. So he has almost zero point 0.4 at the Genesis, zero point 0.9 at the API, and then 1.6 at the Players. So he's trending up where he needs to be trending up. The driver distance, that's one that's going to be, or not the distance, the driver accuracy is one that's going to be a bit
I was going to
iffy for
say,
me.
is
It
that
always
is that what we're
is.
worried about? Is
That's
that what we're
that's
worried
what
about
we're
this week?
worried a little bit about. And so I think at the end of the day, it's going to become to whether or not he can play out of the rough. And nothing I saw really suggests that he couldn't play out of the rough. It was kind of just it was a Jordan Spieth round in at the Players where there was a lot that was clicking, and then there was just like maybe one or two bad breaks that really sort of did not go his way. And so I think that it's certainly possible that we could get a good result this week. And I'm going to be paying attention to see if he's someone that I can count on for the Masters. This is his first big test, and I'm really hoping he can rise to the occasion here.
I'm curious, Nick, when you say count on for the Masters, what are the chances here that we're going to have a Nick Newmeyer picking Jordan Spieth for the Augusta National Masters Championship this
No
year?
way.
They
No
Non
can't.
zero.
way.
Non
Oh
zero.
boy. Oh no. Okay. Okay. Yeah, this
I
Let's
mean,
just see what
if
guys,
he
happens this week.
yeah.
he still has plus odds to be top 20 this week. I mean, he's plus 170. They don't think he's gonna finish top 20.
Man.
I mean, this is
Man,
like I
it's yeah.
said, it's a test. This is his first big test to see if we can get a good result out of him. But I don't know. We'll see if it can happen. We'll see if he's able to play four straight rounds of golf. And if he's able to do that, then I'm very excited for what the rest of the season can hold. But I don't know. Yeah, I guess you just gotta stay tuned.
The real question is how early until we see the meme on Twitter of him behind a tree in the forest shooting shooting a shot.
I,
Oh
I
God.
guarantee
I mean,
we'll say two tree shots this week. That's the
that's the over
I
under
that's
think
too.
yeah,
I think he would sign up for two right now.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good to me. There's a lot of trees out here.
yeah.
But yeah.
We'll definitely keep an eye on him, but he's someone where if he can play a serious four rounds of golf this week, then I think as I've been saying this entire season, and you guys have been patronizing me this whole time, but there's been improvements in the areas that I've been wanting to see improvement week after week. And so I think we're starting to get to the point where, he's talked about, I think last week at Sawgrass, he talked about how he was able to just approach rounds with confidence of being pain free now. Like the wrist is no longer bothering him. And it's the first time in a while that he has been pain free. And so I think just getting that confidence back, I think as the season goes on, I'm not going to go as far as calling him a Cinderella at this point, but as the season goes on, I think um, we can start to see some better results from him. And I think I outlined at the beginning of the year what I was expecting or what I was hoping for, and I think I said President's Cup. I think I said a win and President's Cup was the goal for Spieth. And I think if he could start putting together tournaments right now where it's not just like flashes in the pan, if he could start putting together good solid tournaments, I think those expectations can become a reality.
Well, I mean, I think,
Yeah.
I will say
Somebody
that the
say
pain
something,
free
right?
the pain free thing there is something to that. That's such a big
Yeah.
hurdle, not only physically but mentally too, to get to the place where you're not thinking about it anymore. Because as you come out, everybody's dealt with injuries. As you come out from it, you're mostly thinking about how your body's going to react to that body part. So then once you get past that, and then you can really start to focus on your game more. I think there is something to be said for that. But
And
that's
I
yeah.
yeah. I do generally agree with you, Nick. I think this is like, in terms of like since Jordan's like of the last few years, this feels like the year that I would expect Jordan. I feel like I'm pretty high on Jordan Spieth as a person. Like I think, like as me personally and the person, I think Jordan Spieth is going to have a great year. I don't think we've seen like his best play this year. Like you guys are saying, between like if he could dial in the driver accuracy, honestly, like I would be more considering him to win this week. Like a, I think this is the best Jordan Spieth we've seen in a while, and I am confident that he will continue to play very well and maybe even do so at a major. I'm tempering expectations a little bit, but and trying to egg you on at the same time. But I mostly do, I mostly do agree with all the points you make.
But I also want to point out as well, like I'm in I'm in full defense mode today. Like you guys got me fired up. We're committing to the bit. Um, if we're looking at, we mentioned off the tee, and I just want to make one very clear distinction that he's not necessarily like erratic off the tee.
No,
Like he's not someone like looking
he's no
at
Scotty Scheffler. He's
right.
pretty
Yeah.
tame.
Yeah, no, he's representing the great state of Texas. But I think looking at strokes gained off the tee, just looking at where the metrics are, um, plus 0.26 at the Sony, negative 0.18 at in Phoenix, a negative 0.13 at Pebble, negative 0.35 at Genesis, plus 0.25 at Arnold Palmer, and then negative 0.37 at the players. So yes, losing strokes, but not like massively losing strokes. Like it's not to the point where it's really, I mean, it is hindering him. I'm not gonna say it's not, but getting to the point where getting to the point where it's truly taking him out of competition. He has the other area of his game that are sort of carrying him in that regard. And so, even dating back to when he was in his prime, his driver was never the big source of his game. He was still missing fairways. He was still all over the place, but it was that sort of escapism that really became synonymous with him, that like the long iron play. And that's definitely something that I'm going to be looking more towards is the long iron play. It's gotten certainly a lot better in the past that it's been. And just seeing him, it's not so like we talk about him missing the fairways, we talk about his driver. It hasn't been hampering him as much as you would expect it to. So okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
that
Yeah.
wraps up our Jordan Spieth segment of the day.
Yeah, I'll breeze through a couple guys quickly if you guys don't mind. Obviously, a couple more names worth mentioning. I know I mentioned Justin Thomas after last week. Well, first of all, 2 weeks ago he was horrific at the Arnold Palmer. It was his first tournament back though, and dropped himself into Bay Hill. I think he was just like, if you look at his data golf page, it's just all strokes gained, lost left and right on every single facet of the game, pretty much. But rebounded at the players, finished T8, looked great. Approach play looked really sharp. And at the players specifically, he gained a stroke in both over a stroke per round in both putting and approach, which obviously lends itself to this tournament. And he has the course history here that I mentioned, specifically T3 in 2022, solo second last year, and also has been T13 or better in each of his last five starts, which includes those two, obviously. So he will be my pick. I've talked enough about him. A couple other names. Xander Schauffele has played here well in the past. He's got two T12s and a T5, all in his three starts here. So obviously plays well every time he comes out here. And like you said, Kyle, earlier on, I think it was Kyle who mentioned this, that he's coming off a third place finish at the Players and kind of looked like there could have been a lot more there, to be honest. It took like a little bit of a run towards the end on Sunday to get himself into solo third. But it also, when we were sitting here on Friday and on Thursday and Friday watching the Players, we were, I know Kyle was texting me about how he was so close to picking Xander Schauffele, and I had convinced him on Jake Knapp, and he was blaming me for the inevitable win that Xander Schauffele was about to have. But I mean, and he's been really good here. And like I said, coming off a great finish. But I do want to shout out, and I almost switched my pick, but I dug myself the Justin Thomas hole, and I'm ready to lie in it. But Jacob Bridgman is somebody that is like that should play really, really well here. Again, he has the solo third last year. He's arguably the best course fit of anyone. And he's just like playing truly. Again, I don't want to take away from our Cinderella segment because I will mention his name as like the 2026 example of what I'm talking about, but literally just not missing at any event in 2026. I mean, T18 is his worst finish. So that's another one. The one guy I want to mention very briefly is Corey Connors. I feel like I've mentioned him as a course fit each of the last like 4 weeks. He hasn't really panned out, to be honest. The Players was his best finish of the year so far, and he did gain strokes putting. He will live and die by his putting this week, though. Like it's he's very accurate off the tee. He is one of the best approach players on tour. It's like he's one of those guys that it's like not quite a what could have been guy because he's obviously a great golfer, but with the way he hits the ball off the tee and the way his approach play is, it's a kind of a wonder that he hasn't converted more. And this is the type of event I would expect him to be able to convert, but at the same time, he hasn't really shown me that he can, so I'm not going to be picking him. But it is worth noting that, he's got a T8 here, a T8, T21, T16 in his last three starts, and is one of the best approach players on tour. So if he's really sharp with putting for some week, for some reason has a random, hot week, somebody to watch out for. He kind of finds his way to the top of leaderboards randomly and then implodes on Saturday and Sunday sometimes, but hopefully he can sustain it maybe. But yeah, those are the kind of the last of the few names that I'm really keeping an eye
Let's.
on this week.
I'll throw one more guy out who we haven't mentioned. You guys expecting anything from Brooks this week? Fifth start now. Played well last week. I
And
wouldn't be
better odds than
surprised to
Jordan
see
Spieth.
him. Yeah, I wouldn't
Okay, not
be
by much.
surprised to see him up
Not by
there.
much, barely, but no, like you said, I mean, the approach play was really sharp last week. He kind of like looked great. And like we said, I think where did he finished, was he 6 under at the end of it, but he double
Yep.
bogeyed that 18th hole, his 72nd hole. So he
Yeah,
was, he was a par away from being at 8 under and really in
it
the
was
mix there.
T13.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, still a great finish, but and it easily could have been at whatever it was T8, T9 that those other guys finished at who are at 8 under, at 8 under. I'm still in the trial period. I feel like I'm in my Brooks Koepka free trial right now. He's
Yeah,
come back to the tour. Um, I'm not expected to pick him for anything. We're still testing out where he's at, seeing where the game is. But yeah, he's somebody who I wouldn't be surprised to see him up there. Like, there's not, it's a good field, but there's not a ton of big names. And
yeah.
if he plays like he did last week, there's a lot of the guys that beat him last week aren't here. So, you know,
Yeah,
be
I
worth
I mean,
think
following.
I'm not necessarily I don't know. I'm torn when it comes to Brooks Koepka because I was looking at his stats on Monday when we were recording and I realized that he's 35. And to me,
Yeah.
that's just absolutely crazy. But at the same time, like, he's not one of the best players in the world right now. Like, he's not on top of his game. He's not. And so I feel like we're kind of having all of these expectations of what Brooks Koepka, the major winner, what Brooks Koepka, the world number one, is going to do. And he hasn't been that guy for a very long time. And so I almost think we need to look at him in a bit of a different way. Like, when we talk about like can he rediscover his form, like can he kind of get back to that level, like the answer is no. Like he's not going to get back to like this might be a bit of a bold prediction, but I don't see him getting back to that major championship level that we've become accustomed to seeing him over the years. Maybe he'll can like I'm hoping he contends at the majors this year, but like we're not getting that like fuck you, I'm Brooks Koepka like major champion attitude out of him. And I think he knows that too. And so I think just like you said, just getting a bit more contention under his belt, maybe like I don't think we're ever going to see him dominate this tour again, but still
No.
I think respectable finishes are I think what he's looking for now. And I would definitely consider him in the mix this week, but it wouldn't surprise me if he's in the mix,
that's
but it certainly wouldn't surprise me if he's not either.
yeah. I
Right.
mean, that's why like last week kind of surprised me how well he played.
Right.
So he's just an interesting guy to just see how he's going to do. I think his ceiling is contending. This is a field that he could do that in for sure. And he's not going to be able to be the guy in the past where he just comes out and competes in the majors really hard. Like he's got to try and come out and do that as many times as he can just to kind of regain his form. So I mean, he's a big name, so definitely someone to throw out there and watch. Okay, Will, you want to get to your prove me wrong guy for this week?
I do. I'm gonna roll this into our next segment too. So I'm gonna first, pitch our next segment to,
Yeah.
the loyal people. But so we obviously March Madness starts up tomorrow. Keep an eye out for, the Center Cup pod picks. They're gonna be posted up on Instagram and Twitter later today. But um in the spirit of March Madness, in the spirit of the madness and the Cinderellas and everything, we wanted to do our own little Cinderella segment and kind of talk about some guys who last year and early on this year have kind of proved themselves to be Cinderellas, guys who, we came in with very low expectations and have really outperformed everything we thought they would do. Um, whether it be consistent or peaks and valleys, like that kind of thing. And also, take a little shot in the dark and maybe throw a dart on somebody who we think might be the Cinderella to watch for the rest of the year. And the reason that ties into my prove me wrong guy is because my prove me wrong guy this week is JJ Spawn. who is one of my Cinderellas from 2025. Um, as a for the prove me wrong part of the JJ Spawn talk, look, it's just he had a great 25, like we said, great 2025, obviously highlighted by his US Open win. Um, and he's only got one other PGA Tour win, but he also had that playoff loss to Rory McIlroy at the Players last year. But it's
It's
just
still
not been a
shocking
good.
to see him as like the 12th overall rated golfer
I
in the
know.
world.
That's what, yeah, that's crazy to me. I mean, he's high up on the odds this week too, and I truly do not understand why that might be. He
Yeah, he's
started
been
off with
brutal this year.
the T24 at the Players was his best finish so far. He's got two missed cuts at the Arnold Palmer and the Genesis, the big tournaments that's this year that he's played. He's got a T45 at the AT&T, um, and a T40 and a cut to start the season at the Sony and the Farmers. It's like he really just hasn't done anything. Um, and this is kind of my this is so when I talk about when I talk a little bit about the Cinderellas in a second, the there's a couple different types. There's guys who have peaks and valleys, and like, I'll give you some comps for some Cinderellas from March Madnesses past, but uh JJ Spawn's the type of guy that he got the big win. He was a low seed. He got the big win, but he didn't then, he didn't make a run to the Final Four. And it's hard to make these, golf to March Madness
It's
comps
it's
because
very much
obviously,
like his alma mater, San Diego State.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Although even they made it back in, what was that, 23? They made quite
Yeah,
the run.
to the championship game. Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't even I would honestly, let me see what I comped him to be honest. I had it down here. I have him as 2023 Princeton. Is my
Mm.
JJ Spawn. A 15 seed, gets big wins, beat Arizona, who was the 2 seed, beat Missouri, the 7, but that's the peak. And he didn't that they played Creighton in the Sweet 16 and they got blown out. Or they lost. I think it was by a sizable margin. But that's kind of what I'm talking about with JJ Spawn, is he's the type of Cinderella where so far what we've seen from him is a really high peak at the US Open and at the Players, frankly, when he lost only to Rory McIlroy. That's pretty great. But we haven't seen the sustained success. Obviously, haven't seen it translate to 2026, and I'm kind of looking for him to show me that he's not just a Cinderella and that he's here to stay. Um, and I just haven't seen that at all. So that's my JJ Spawn. He's my guy this week, but might prove me wrong guy. The other Cinderella from 2025, and he's a good example of the other type of Cinderella that I'll talk about, is Ben Griffin. Um, JJ Spawn came into 2025 ranked 119th in OWGR, which is why I'm throwing him as like a 15 seed Princeton, whereas Ben Griffin came in ranked in the 60s, sorry. And that's why my comp for him is more of a 2024 Alabama, which, for a little background, is a 4 seed that weren't a huge underdog necessarily, but they made a Final Four run off of some good wins over, Charleston. They got a good draw playing Grand Canyon in their end of 32. Then they beat North Carolina, 1 seed. They beat Clemson, a 6, before they lost to UConn in the Final Four, the eventual champion. And that kind of reminded me of Ben Griffin. Like he had 12 top 10 finishes in 2025. He had wins at the Zurich Classic, the Charles Schwab, and the Worldwide Technologies Championship, which is in the FedEx Cup Fall, as well as top tens at two majors. And obviously, was on the Ryder Cup team. So was JJ Spawn to cap off their 2025. But he he's been more consistent, and he's been more of like a guy that, when he's playing in 2026, when he's playing, I expect him to be up there. I expect him to play well. I think he's, maybe you could certainly argue that he's fallen off a little bit this year compared to his performances last year, but uh yeah, that's those are kind of the two different types of Cinderellas, I think, in golf. To me, is like there's guys that have the high peaks, the random major championship like JJ Spawn, and then there's guys like Ben Griffin who, I expect him to win 1 to 2 PGA Tour events a year, kind of, right? Like if he's
He
playing
better.
well,
He's on my
and
fantasy team.
exactly, yeah, yeah. Nick is a perfect example of why Ben Griffin is sustained success Cinderella, why he's 2024 Alabama. Um, and then we can jump to 2026 because there's really only one. I have two listed, but Chris Goddard isn't. I don't. Do I count him as a Cinderella anymore? He's got the two wins. I think Jacob Bridgman is the real Cinderella of 2026. Obviously, I teased that one a little bit, but he started the year at 81st, no WGR, zero PGA Tour wins. I think on our last episode, I called him out as having one PGA Tour win in 2025, which is false. I always confuse that Cognizant Classic from last year, where he finished second to Joe Highsmith. For some reason, in my head, they're the same person. But congratulations, Jacob Bridgman, for differentiating yourself from Joe Highsmith. Obviously, you know, he came in with zero PGA Tour wins to this season and five top tens in 2025. And so far in 2026, he's done no worse than T18 in seven events. And that's three signature events, including obviously the win at the Genesis Invitational and a T5 at the Players Championship last week. Um, so my early comp for him, obviously, we'll have to see how his success plays out, is 2023 Miami, a five seed that made the Final Four in a pretty wacky year with FAU, SDSU,
Oh,
like you
that's a good
said,
one.
Kyle, and UConn. But they were a team that came in another year where the ACC was being disrespected, as they always are this time of year, and made it to the Final Four with some wins over Drake, Indiana, Houston, Texas, before falling to the eventual national champion. So he's given me unlike Chris Gotterup, who has had two really great wins but has performed very poorly at big events. Jacob Bridgman's given me no reason to believe that he's going anywhere. Right? Like I any week he's teeing it up. This week he's one of the favorites of my like at this point. So that's my very long spiel on the most recent Cinderellas. I had a lot of fun comping them, so I wanted to make sure I got to throw all those in there. Do you want to hear my
Just to
Chris
get
Gotterup
this
comp?
straight, Duke and North Carolina ACC they're underrated. The ACC underrated in
I feel
tournaments.
like not Duke, to be fair, every year we get into the March Madness tournament, everybody's the ACC sucks, the ACC's never gonna, and then there's always the UNC run to the Final Four when they were like what, an eight seed when they ended up playing Duke. There's the Miami runs. There was obviously Syracuse back in the day, but there's the ACC always seems to the UVA sometimes randomly. UVA is a three
Yeah,
seed this
that's
year.
fair.
We'll see what they do. They always seem to sneak a team into like the Elite Eight, and you're like, you look up and there's eight teams left, and three of them are ACC teams. You're like, what the
Yeah,
hell? How do we get here? That's my ACC spiel. But
yeah, you might be
my
right.
my Chris Goddard comp, just so I can get it out there, was 2019 Oregon. They won two games. This was actually maybe my favorite comp because I feel like it was the most accurate. 2019 Oregon was a 12 seed. They won two games. Beat five seed Wisconsin, got a favorable draw, beat 13 seed UC Irvine, and then lost it to the one seed Virginia. And that's kind of how I see Chris Goddard. It's like he got those wins, got a good win early in the season, beat a good team, if you want to put it that way, and then kind of lucked into it is the wrong word because he birdied like
Oh,
five of the final six holes at the WM Phoenix Open to get into that playoff, but Hideki also did collapse. Um, but yeah, then you get to the big events, you play one seed Virginia, and you get to the signature events, and you can't. He's not backing it up.
scrappy,
So
scrappy, underrated one seed Virginia. How did they do it?
yeah, um, but yeah. So Nick, I might ask you to let me catch my breath for a second and give. So the follow up of this part is the predicted Cinderellas, who we think is going to maybe overperform for the rest of the year. And you can play that either way you want. You can say like, look, I think this guy might luck into a major, or you can say I think this guy is going to have uh seven top tens for the rest of the year and maybe find a win. But I'm going to let Nick take that because I've been talking for a long time and people are probably tired of my voice at this point. But hope you guys enjoyed those March Madness comps. I was spending some good time this morning, kind of piecing those together.
No, I wasn't even thinking of like I didn't realize how in depth you were gonna go. I was just going to give like a player I thought was gonna do it. I didn't know we were like likening them to actual teams and stuff
I'm
like
not
that.
doing that for my prediction. Don't worry. I was only doing that for past performances. I that was more of
Um,
just a fun little experiment for me.
I mean, I can make this comp, and as anybody that's watching this on YouTube can see, I got the Loyola polo today. Showing some
You've
love
got
to
a
my
polo
alma
for
mater.
everything. It is
I
the most
I'm always
fascinating thing.
prepared, Will. The
You
ultimate
are.
Cinderella. I gotta rep my alma mater. Sister Jean is a March Madness icon, and the 2018 Loyola team that went to the Final Four, 2021 team that went to the Sweet 16. Funny story. I so the day after or the day before I like officially like was gonna go to Loyola was when they beat Illinois to go to the Sweet 16. And then the day that I put my deposit down was when they lost in the Sweet 16. So I'm like, we're getting off to a great start here. But if I can rep my alma mater in this little segment, I think the person that I'm really looking for is Austin Smotherman for I can make the 2018 Loyola comp there. So for a bit of backstory, this team went 32-6 on the year, 15-3 in conference play. Entered the tournament with a buzzer beater against Miami, buzzer beater against Tennessee and Nevada. They played 1 point games for all, or one possession games rather, for all three of those games, then beat Kansas State to go to the Final Four, their first, or not their first ever Final Four, excuse me. But then they lost to Michigan in the Final Four. Did not go all the way, sadly. Could have won it all that year, but did not. And so the person that I'm going to liken to them is Austin Smotherman. I think he's someone that we haven't really talked about, has had a bunch of success last year on the Corn Ferry Tour. And I think that, hopefully we could see, just as kind of Loyola got hot in the middle of the season, I'm kind of going to liken that to Smotherman last year with Corn Ferry. So he won the BMW Charity Pro-Am in June of 2025, closed out June with another win at the Memorial Health Championship, and then kind of had a string of not so good play. But then he was able to secure his PGA Tour card, made his season debut at the Sony with a miscut, then T8 at the American Express, um, two more cuts, and then he tied for second at the Cognizant. He was someone that was very much in that race, and obviously wasn't able to get it done, but was someone that was very much in the conversation while Shane Lowry was having his collapse. And so that runner-up finish at the Cognizant propelled him to the top 100 in the OWGR. And so he withdrew from the Arnold Palmer, wasn't able to finish that tournament, but he finished T13 at the Players, so another respectable result. And so I see it as someone who's starting to get hot, just as Loyola was killing it during the regular season, getting ready to go dancing, and maybe we can see some good results, and some good results from Austin Smotherman this year. I'm praying he doesn't have the ending to that story that Loyola does, as my team is currently almost a sub 300 Ken Palm team now. So, um, hoping for better fortunes for Austin Smotherman, but he's someone that I definitely think is poised to make a run this year and at least make some noise in a few more tournaments this year. I don't know about majors, but definitely has some gas left in the tank.
Yeah, I'd say
Yeah.
Smotherman is poised to hang on to his status, unlike Loyola Chicago, unfortunately, since then. Was a great run, though. Was a great run. Can we? You also got to throw out Jake Knapp, no? I mean, the guy
Oh
finished
Yeah.
yeah.
as the 105th rated golfer in the world last year and was just awesome to start this season, up to 42nd now.
Yeah, I guess that's honestly, I feel like honestly the only reason I didn't put him in there, I think I for some reason I think of him as a more established golfer than maybe he actually
Yeah,
is,
I
you know?
know.
Like in my
Yeah,
head, I'm like you're right. Like what did he come into the year in OWG? You said 100th ranked, something like that?
he finished
Um,
last year as 105th.
yeah, that I mean, if you had asked me and I didn't know that, I would have told you like
You wouldn't
40,
have hit. Sure,
which is
yeah,
what like
exactly.
I guess he didn't win last year, right? He won in 2024.
2024.
So
Yeah.
like he did have a down year last year, but for some reason in my head, I just think of him as a more established figure than he is. But I'd be willing to, I'd hear out a conversation for him as a Cinderella. I don't know what the comp would be. I feel like I'd almost give him, a three seed UConn to win the national championship type of comp rather than some deep cut. But um, to give you mine for the rest of this year, and this is a little bit of a not a homer pick, that's the wrong word, but just because I really like this guy. And I didn't initially have a comp for him, but I've thought up one. I don't know how perfectly it fits, but I'm gonna roll with it. First of all, my guy is Nikolai Højgaard. For a little background, he came into the year in 77th in OWGR, so not necessarily the biggest underdog in the world. And he's played well in the past, but to start his 2026 season, he's been up and down. Generally, I think it's been a success. Obviously, he's vaulted up to 47th in OWGR, which or 48th, I believe, in OWGR, which is a sizable jump for sure. And then the season has included a T4 the Hero Dubai Desert Classic on the DP World Tour, a T3 at the WM Phoenix Open, and a T6 at the Cognizant. But what I'm curious about with Nikolai, and I think I'm actually I'm taking the other Cinderella route than what Nick took. I'm kind of thinking more that he might find his way into a PGA Championship major or like some sort of major, just because I think he can put it together for a week. His upside is really, really high. Hits the ball a mile when he hits it straight. It's great. He's a really good golfer. He hasn't really put it together at the big events this year. His like best, PGA Tour finishes really are a T4 at last year's Genesis. He did have a T14 at the Open Championship last year. Those are kind of the only big event like good finishes that he's really logged in the last, 400 days or whatever that might be. Um, but I really like Nikolai Højgaard. My comp in for this theoretical major win, um, were he to win it, would be I'm going with 2014 UConn, who did win the national championship as a 7 seed. The reason
Oh,
I picked them is because I wanted to try to make the argument that they kind of lucked into it, which they didn't. They played well and beat 1 seeds, but in the national championship, they were up against an 8 seed Kentucky team, so it was a little bit of a different animal. They weren't in the final against somebody else who was expected to be there. They were against another kind of underdog like themselves. But part of the reason I wanted to liken them to Nikolai Højgaard is because I think if he does knock off a U.S. Open, I don't think he's going to disappear into the night, or not a U.S. Open, a major championship. I don't think he's then going to disappear into the night like somebody we've talked about before, who I'm hoping for bigger things from. Um, but I would expect that if he were to find his way into a really great finish at a major this year, that I actually think he's a great golfer, and I think he will be around honestly, regardless of how he finishes at majors this year. But um, I could absolutely see him like looking up randomly during a major championship, being like, "Holy shit, is Nikolai Højgaard going to win this thing?" Like, so that's going to be my guy. That's going to be my guy for my Cinderella for the rest of the year. We're not going to be dialed in keeping track of these guys, but just know that if Nikolai Højgaard wins a major, I am taking full credit, and I
Of
expect Nick will do
course.
the
we'll
same if
add
Austin
him to your
Smother.
follow through guy.
Yeah, exactly. He's going to be the 17th guy on my bench, on my ever growing team of guys that I can claim for when they do well. I could just say, I talked about him because I talk about everybody. So he's just another. But I do
And
really think that he could have a pretty fantastic year.
and I'll throw one more name out there just
Do
because
it.
I was thinking Ryo Hasatsune. He's
I
someone
thought
Yeah,
about
that
that one. Yeah.
started the
yeah,
year. I think the comp that I gave, that I just came up with my head is something I haven't really thought too deep in. I'll give him 2025 McNeese
Ooh,
in
just
the
won a
sense
12 seed that
that
won a game.
like, which hot take, completely unrelated to the point that I'm about to make. I can't stand Amir Khan. Like that
The
whole
what
gimmick
is he?
just
Aura Khan.
that whole gimmick just bothers me. Um,
yeah.
anyway, um, so Ryo Satsune started the year, cut at Sony, 44th at the American Express, and then out of nowhere, basically, tied for second at Farmers, tied for 10th at Phoenix, tied for eighth at Pebble. Um, to put that into perspective, McNeese came into the tournament as the 12th seed and beat number five Clemson. They then went on to lose pretty handedly to number four Purdue, as was more or less expected. And so, getting back to my man Rio here, sort of fell back down to earth with 45th at the Genesis and 33rd at the Arnold Palmer. But just like Amir Khan and McNeese, um,
You hate him?
Hisatsu, no, I don't, I don't hate him, but he's back, is what I'm trying to say. They're
Yeah.
back in the field. He was tied for 13th, so he's got his top 25 at the Players, sort of like a big tournament where if you can at least get in the top 25, that means you're like more or less serious. So he got his top 25 at the Players, back in the field at the Valspar this week. Just like Amir Khan and McNeese are. See, that's why like we think of Amir Khan, but we think of anybody on the team. Like he's almost like a bigger storyline than the team. And for
Yeah.
what? Because he holds the
It's the
stupid boombox. Like,
the name one person on McNeese State, you'd get Amir Khan more than you'd get anybody
right.
else, at least from the average March Madness population. Maybe not college basketball lovers, but
So
but
anyway,
I
my point is like didn't end up, going as far as we thought maybe a 12 seed would go, but still showed signs of life and is back again showing more signs of life, just like McNeese. So
And he's a little bit like Nikolai Højgaard, just in that, in my head at least, in that he can string together a hell of a lot of birdies. Like
yeah,
he can shoot a 60 with the best of them.
exactly. Yeah.
So yeah,
He could be
I like
a
that.
good pick this week.
Yeah, it's not a bad
Wouldn't
look
be
at
a bad
all.
one, honestly.
Add
But
him to the
yeah.
list.
Yeah. Put them on the, we'll get our picks. We'll get our picks
Yeah.
up later tonight, and then stay tuned for the subsequent coverage of Justin Thomas's withdrawal tomorrow.
Oh God, dude, I will. That will be the end of me. I literally will. I'll have to rethink how I do picks. I'll have to just yeah. I'll have to hide it from the world. Whatever Etsy witch is vexing my picks needs to stop, please.
Etsy, which is crazy. All right.
Okay.
So moving on to the rest of the world.
Yeah, after all that,
Let's see. So we got the DP World Tour playing in China at the Hainan Classic. The LPGA Tour is at the Fortinet Founders Cup in California.
they're
Um,
stateside.
Exactly. Yeah, back from the Asian swing. I read a really interesting thing about the LPGA today. It was the commissioner of the LPGA was on the No Laying Up podcast. It was either this morning or yesterday. Craig Kessler, the LPGA commissioner, was on the podcast, and he talked about sort of what he wanted to see from the LPGA Tour this year. He had mentioned that he wakes up every night at like 2 in the morning. He just is sitting in bed staring at the ceiling, and he just wakes up and is like, how do we keep moving? How do we push forward? And some of the things that he mentioned was, obviously they have the new broadcasting licensing deal this year, which allows for more live coverage and gives them a bit more of a platform. And I think what he had mentioned was the difference between exposure and stardom. And I think when you think of stars on the LPGA tour, like you think of Nelly Korda, you think of maybe Charlie Hull, but outside of like, they have their good players, don't get me wrong, but when it comes to like the overall golf landscape, like there's not really that many stars, if you will. And so by giving more exposure, they're trying to create these stars, trying to put them on the same media pedestal as the men and sort of get more name recognition, get more stars in the field. Um, Another thing they looked at was scheduling. Some things of like just the way I think he had mentioned the way the season is scheduled. That obviously they just had the Asian swing. Now they go back to Asia towards the end of the season, and then come back and do the playoffs with the Annika and the CME and all that. And so I think what he had mentioned was sort of either eliminating that second Asian swing or just trying to like maybe condense it a little bit more together so that there's not these like gaps on the schedule where the stars aren't playing towards the end and people sort of tune out and the drama kind of fizzles. He said the same thing as what Brian Rolap is doing is just making sure there's drama each and every week and making sure that they're able to sort of sustain that. And the last thing you mentioned that I thought was pretty interesting was scheduling, and not just dates, but like actual courses that they're playing as well. One thing you mentioned was obviously what's tying their hands right now is a lot of long-term contracts, but also that they're looking at some courses that the PGA has since abandoned, either because it's too short for the PGA now, or maybe even looking towards some spots that the PGA already is at and just trying to make sure their players are playing at some of the best courses in the world and delivering that product for their fans. And so it sounds like the LPGA commissioner knows what he's talking about. It sounds like we obviously didn't touch upon it on the pod, but we had it on our TikTok. I think there's the quote from Rolap that um, you just do what the fans are saying, and 9 times out of 10, you're going to be correct, which is the
Mhm.
best quote I've ever heard from a commissioner, by the way. But it sounds like Craig Kessler's kind of going on the same pathway for the LPGA and trying to make it to where it can not compete, but it can be held to the same standard that the PGA is. And I think they're definitely going on the right direction, and I'm excited to see what they can do the rest of the way.
I mean, there's enough good golfers on the LPGA tour to make it compelling just as a product and
For
as
sure.
the sport lies. I mean, there's so many good players, and it'd be a lot more exciting if if we could watch more of the tournaments for sure.
Right.
So
Like
it's
even
it's
just
an
like
interesting point.
the Asian swing, like we had mentioned that, it was going on at like 2, 3 in the morning. And, we can't watch this stuff while we're asleep. And so just making sure that they're playing in the media markets where they're gonna have the most eyes on them is gonna be great for the future growth of the tour.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so the other event, Live, is in South Africa. Like I said at the top, I think it's going to be Phil's debut. So whatever that means. Um, Next on T. So we will be back recapping on Monday, of course, all weekend's activities. Follow us on our socials, Twitter and X at Center Cup Pod, Instagram and TikTok at centercup.pod. We're going to put our picks out for the Valspar officially once this pod goes up on our Instagram and Twitter. We're also going to be churning out content throughout the week and the weekend as the tournament goes along. Will and Nick do such a great job doing that, keeping you up to date with everything that's going on. You can email us, centercup.pod@yahoo.com. And I think that's about all we've got. Any final words?
No,
Uh,
let's
I'll see.
March Madness, man. Let's have a great weekend. I'm gonna sit on the couch for 14 hours tomorrow.
It's
Yeah,
gonna be a great weekend to be on a couch.
this is the one of the best 4 days there is in the calendar year for certainly for sports. So thanks
I know
everybody
we're
for listening. Yeah.
I wait before we get off. I do want to ask if you guys have any major upsets you've predicted so far. Do you have anything you love?
Let's see.
After
Let
last
me
year, it's tough. I mean, all four one seeds in the final four last year. I'm trying to. I always try to find an upset or two, but It's hard not to get the one seeds back there. And
Yeah, I mean, people. I know
for
last year was people kind of expected the one seeds were so much better than the others, and there was kind of a distinction. And I don't think it's quite the same as this year, but it's still tough when you're looking at it to be like, God, am I really going to pick like 7 seed UCLA to beat UConn, or are you
I
going to pick
know
Villanova to beat Arizona? It's like I don't know.
a lot of ways to
I,
look like an idiot in March.
I got
Yeah,
Houston beating Florida to get to the Final Four.
I
So
like that. What's Houston? What seed is Houston? Are they
yeah,
two? They're
a
two,
there
right?
two,
too.
yeah. So,
I got the
Yeah,
same.
I
I
know.
got the
That's the
same.
thing.
That doesn't make me feel good.
I started really liking the Arkansas over Arizona pick and
Oh,
like either having Arkansas or Gonzaga. Also, I hate Purdue
oh, you just
this
love
year.
A Cup. You just
I
love
do
A
love
Cup.
Acuff,
How could you
but
not?
the problem is I keep seeing this is I'm going to go on a very brief tangent because I know we got to get out of here, but I keep seeing other people picking Arkansas to go to the Final Four, and I'm like, oh, now I can't do that.
Never a good sign.
Unfortunately, that means it's not going
I
to happen.
I got them
Never a
losing to
But
good sign.
Wisconsin.
oh yeah, I have Wisconsin losing to High Point. Don't tell anybody that.
Oh,
Um,
that's a
but
that's a popular one
but
too.
um, this is my one gripe that I've discovered I really bothers me yesterday is the like Instagram account that posts all the celebrities brackets.
Oh
I
yeah.
don't care. Stop
No.
doing that. I don't
Yeah.
care. Also, they posted Bugs Bunny's bracket. What does that mean? They posted Pablo Sanchez from
That's what
Backyard
I was
Baseball's
thinking the
bracket. I'm
same
like,
thing. I'm
who
like, what are you
is there
talking
just like
about?
an intern back there that's cooking up a bracket and is like, yeah, I'm Pablo Sanchez today? Like, what
Yeah.
does that mean to me? Also, like the only one that was funny this year is and also they have like random guys that like, I saw Trevor Wallace did one, and he had like Sienna winning over a 14 seed. I'm like, okay, cool.
Oh yeah.
The only one that was funny was Kyle Guy having UVA lose in the round of 32, which just rocks for
Oh, he's
like
very
anybody
Arizona.
uninitiated, a UVA veteran. He's like having his own team lose in the round of 32 in an upset. And like that's what I want. Yeah, just I want no bias. Just show me some random
Yeah, he's
real
strong
bracket.
from
Yeah,
it.
but no, I we need to stop publicizing random people's brackets. I say before I publish our brackets, but we're not random people. We're important and we're also right. So
Yeah. I
Exactly.
mean, we're not imaginary characters at
I'm
least. We
not
are
Bugs
people behind
Bunny.
the picks.
There is
Yeah.
The backyard
nobody
baseball Pablo one, that was crazy.
I was like, what are we doing?
there's nobody with more credibility to make sports picks than podcasters.
It's
Yes,
true.
100%.
This is the Copperhead bracket. It wasn't me. It's not my fault that it's wrong. He picked them. She picked them. I
Yeah,
don't know. Not gendering the
he's
snake.
been in my shoulder the entire time, like been whispering to me.
Just
Yeah.
sweet nothings, just giving you all the info on the March Madness
Yeah,
bracket.
he really likes Northern Iowa over St. John's.
He said it, not
Ooh.
me. He said
Right.
it. Well, anyways, yeah, that's my spiel. Let's have a great weekend. A lot to look forward to.
Yeah, enjoy the
Absolutely.
weekend, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.